Good evening, everyone. This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting Tuesday, March 12th, 6 p.m. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Could I get a roll call, please, of the committee members?
Kristen Pantera-Oliver, Historical Commission.
Jim Soul.
Jim Souza.
Tony Gaius.
Rick DeFarias, Park Board.
John Frank, Conservation.
So we're missing John Francoeur and Charlie Monis, and we're also missing a Housing Authority member, which we are still waiting to acquire. Is there-
Chuck should be here any minute. He was coming from
Okay. Is there anyone signed up for citizen input? Anybody want to speak with citizen input? No. Next item, can I get acceptance of the meeting minutes from February 11th, 2019?
Make a motion to accept the meetings minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the funding hearings for the FY20 projects.
I'd like to make a motion that we skip to the Vietnam's veteran because they have a laptop, they can do a presentation. Once their presentation is over, I can plug into my laptop so that we can have the application up on the screen.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So could we have the members or people responsible for the Vietnam vet up here, please?
Good evening.
Good evening. So this is the application for the construction of a permanent 80% replica of the Vietnam Healing Wall at the Veterans Bicentennial Memorial Park. This organization is asking the CPA for $500,000 towards this project.
Correct.
So if you would like all to state your name and affiliation, that'd be great.
Justin Latini, I'm the fundraising chair for this project. I'm also the secretary on the State Council for Vietnam Veterans in Massachusetts.
Jack Sprague, President Emeritus at Bristol Community College. I'm the education chair for the committee.
Rodney Jocks, I'm with William Stark Architects.
Ray Hay, Director of Veteran Services, City of Baltimore.
Thank you. So if you'd like to start the presentation.
Could we do the PSA to start, if that's possible? That way they would give a really good overview of what the project is.
Yeah.
Rodney, you know how to spell that. Rodney.
Rodney can do it.
There we go.
If it was an M16,
Yeah,
they'd probably be
there
able
we
to.
Honesty, courage, sacrifice, pride, our city. Fall River has traditionally been in the forefront of honoring our nation's soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. Vietnam veterans took the initiative to secure rights to an 80% size replica of the Healing Wall of Veterans Bicentennial Park. The names of over 58,000 fallen heroes will be engraved on the 360-foot-long replica wall. 100% of the money raised benefits the building of our Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall in Fall River. Help build our wall, which is scheduled to open in 2020. The meaning, the spirit, and the value of the wall is everyone's. Be part of this exceptional, once-in-a-lifetime project. To make a donation, please visit vietnammemorialwall.org or connect with us at facebook.com.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, yes.
Just want to give you a quick overview of why the project is important to the, not only to Massachusetts and Rhode Island, as we have bought the proprietary rights for this wall. There are only 3 other walls in the country that are 80%, Utah, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. We will be the 4th wall in the United States to have an 80% replica of this wall. This wall will tie into a major project here in Fall River with your waterfront. this making the waterfront pretty much the jewel of this South Coast area. Tied in with the Battleship Cove and now Bicentennial Park, with 3 or 4 of the major monuments already on site. We're vasting at 360 feet long. The monument is built at the same replica as the one in Washington DC, which you'll actually be walking down into the monument. This monument represents over 1,200 Massachusetts heroes and 211 from Rhode Island who are on the wall with the 58,000 listed. The project will be, hopefully begin this spring. A lot of infrastructure. The panels are being manufactured down in Texas. Rodney will show you one of the panels. They're black aluminized, iodized aluminum panels. You take a look at what a panel will look like.
There are 140 of panels.
How thick is the entire wall?
The wall,
8 feet is the highest point, and 360. Is that what your question?
The thickness, to attach these panels, they will attach the wall. What are we looking at?
so the wall, as Justin said, is 360 feet long, 180 feet per leg, and about approximately 8 to 10 feet high. The wall itself is probably 8 to 12 inches of CMU or concrete, and then we'll attach the panels to the wall. So overall, when it's all said and done with, maybe 12 to 16 inches thick.
You have the picture?
You have that in the packet, I believe. The other 2 components of this, besides tying it in with the waterfront, is obviously as a memorial to those who served during Vietnam. And then the third leg would be the educational portion, which Dr. Sprague can speak about the educational portion.
Yes, we're, you want to point out also, as Justin mentioned, that we have the exclusive rights for Massachusetts and for Rhode Island. We've already purchased those rights from a company that provides the wall in Texas. So that is really an exciting opportunity for Fall River and South Coast to have the statewide as well as Rhode Island. My position as educator, I wanted to kind of point out this this photo captures what I have intended. Seems to be a parent with a young daughter pointing to, I guess, a relative on the wall. And to me, it spans the 3 generations of what the war. We're not really talking about the war. We're talking about the wall, and we're here to honor the over 58,000, and that number changes, by the way, as new information comes to play. But we have over 58,000 names, and we want to honor those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. We want to honor all Vietnam War veterans. We want to honor all Vietnam era veterans, and we want to honor all veterans who served no matter when. It's very important to provide recognition for service to their country. So we're very excited about that. I've been working with the superintendent, not just in Fall River. Remember, we have the whole state, the 2 states to work through. I've contacted the Secretary of Education in Massachusetts and the Director of, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs in Massachusetts and the Director of Veterans Affairs in Rhode Island. They're on board. They're helping as best we can. I've talked to some Durfee school students who are in civic engagement or civic learning. And one item that we talked about, there were some books about the wall for children, and maybe the older high school students could serve with the younger students and talk about the wall and go through the books with them. There are also, Justin mentioned some of the casualties from the area. 23 people from Fall River are on that wall. And there are families still here from those people who we lost. And some of the students are interested in interviewing the families who are here who lost someone on that wall. And that'll be the same across the state, 1,150 in Massachusetts and 211 in Rhode Island. So we're also working with Salve Regina, again, business model students in the business department are working with us to promote the project. And so we're very excited about the scope of it and the recognition that it will bring. It's in an ideal location in our Veterans Bicentennial Memorial Park, and we're very excited about it.
Part of this project, we'll be putting a pavilion on site. That pavilion will actually act for any veterans group or any groups who are meeting at the park, one central location for presentations, any ceremonies, and that pavilion will be centrally located in the park.
Is that part of the cost?
Yes, they'll be included.
You might see in the picture too, and as if anyone has been to Washington, people leave mementos and flowers and letters and dog tags and all kinds of memorabilia. And we're going to try to capture those as well and save those. We make an archives where we have oral histories of all veterans, living veterans, as well as, of course, the families of those who we lost. And so it's going to be quite a historical piece for the region.
And the other location being here in Fall River, why the committee picked Fall River is central located between Boston and Providence, and for those coming up from the south going to Cape Cod, working this area here in the south coast, it just makes sense to put the monument here. Again, we have the rights for Massachusetts, so within a 2 to 3 hour period, any veteran in both states could come to the wall and make it a full day, because you'd either start at the wall and then walk down to the Battleship Cove and walk along that waterfront, which the city and the state is doing an amazing job changing that waterfront. Again, I'm not a local. I did not grow up in the area. I actually retired out here. So for me, this is pretty exciting to see the city and the state putting the investment into this waterfront and really doing something that's amazing. As somebody from the outside looking in, it's quite an amazing project that all of you and the folks here in the Fall River and South Coast area have done.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions?
Sure.
I think it's a great project, so I wish you the best of luck. How's your fundraising coming?
We're fundraising as we go. Every day we're picking up monies. Don't have I think we're at 600,000. I think we're looking at $1.4 million. We've really only been raising funds for about 6-7 months. We had to go through the park department, and once we get the 501c, so we're starting now to pick up funds away from this area, the South Coast. We've concentrated in this area. Now we're moving beyond that. I've been out to Springfield and to Boston, and so we're still fundraising and plan to continue to fundraise.
You know, there's a raffle being held about the demolition of and the income has been dedicated for our project, whatever happens with that raffle. The incoming statewide VFW commander takes office in June, and he said that's going to be his project for all of next year. His priority is to focus attention and fundraising efforts on our wall. The veterans groups themselves, VFW, the American Legion, Vietnam veterans groups, really have all been on board. As soon as we contact them, what can we do?
When you said 1920 it'd be done, right?
November of 2020, next November. This is a pretty aggressive project. We've given ourselves a little over 18 months to get this project completed.
We want to break ground this spring and open. Hope our target date is Veterans Day, November in 2020.
So they wouldn't qualify for the next round. We wouldn't be done yet if they split it or needed something.
And you can see the letters of support that we have.
Are there any actual construction estimates from different companies for the different projects?
Do we have,
Yeah, the cost of the wall is approximately $300,000, which is 2/3 paid for.
It's already paid for.
The wall will be in Fall River in June, and the final payment will be paid to the manufacturer of the wall. We have retained an architect, which is Stock, as Rodney represents. And we also, has the engineer been on site yet?
Yep, so there was a civil engineer
We
who's been
retained
on
an
site.
engineer on site,
What about
so
like the construction of the pavilion you were saying about, is there like construction costs already estimated for that and all?
that's being done now. That's the last piece of the project to do. And,
Looking at what, 400,000, 500,000?
yeah,
Yeah.
about that,
4 to 500,000, that's projected with,
yeah.
haven't got the bids
To
in
your
yet.
question, Mr. Chairman, we have not selected a general contractor at this point until we get the plans that tells us what we're actually gonna need to do. But we've had many general contractors in the area say that they would help. And what we're doing now is, we have a quasi, we have to pay, we understand that, but a lot of people want to give us
Yeah.
a donation in kind. So, say concrete is a $200,000 project,
Company might
we
want
might
this.
end up paying 150.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's where we're at. We're well into it. I head the facilities committee, which we've been meeting, and we're well on track.
And this will include camera and security, lighting, electricity
Water.
for the microphones and things like that when events come forward. So it's a complicated landscaping.
Project it is, there's a lot of in-kind services for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is the project beholden to the city's RFP process, or are you able to
No,
privately contract?
no, we're outside the city project as far as that goes. But we have a memorandum of understanding with the city where when this project is finished, we will turn this over, similar to when they build a school or something like that. Then this committee would stay intact to oversee the operation of it, et cetera. So the city's part, and it would be like anything else in the park, like our other monuments are there.
And most of us are Vietnam vets, and we'll make sure that it's a continuing oversight. Yeah.
Yeah, I would make sure that you guys do have somebody to be oversight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We do have a letter, I don't know
Because I've seen stuff go.
if we have the letter of, we can get it to the committee, the letter of memorandum of understanding, which
Yeah, I
you've
think-
probably all seen
Yeah, I think
on
it's-
other projects that have to do with the city, so.
Yeah, no, I was mostly concerned, just because of when you get estimates, if it was a city project, it affects the
No.
RFP process, so.
And that was some of my questions also, because it is a city park. And over the last 5 years, anytime it's been a city property, they've taken control of it. And they've made us go through the RFP process. And one of the other questions is, a lot of this wall is going to be in a form of a gift to the city. So is the city council required to first get a letter from the mayor saying, please accept this
The
gift?
city council's vote will come when we offer it as a gift. The committee,
After
we're a
the
separate
work
After it's complete.
501(3), I think, if I get the right numbers right? 501(3)C?
C3.
Right.
C3, if I got that right?
They approved the
That's our
300,000.
corporation, and that's what will give it to the city, and that's when the city council vote would come. We already have the vote of the park department to place it there. So we've gone through each process that we need to go through.
And we don't plan on turning it over until it's a complete project. Because it has to be done, and it has to be done right. And we want to make sure that we do it, so it's done right, by our standards that we're keeping up. And we wouldn't turn it over until it's complete.
Yeah, it's just, I'm sure the city is going to want some insurance, liability, sign-offs, whatever that process is. That's my only concern. I am very supportive of this project, though. I
Thank you.
just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
we cross our Ts and dot our Is. through the process.
Some of our committee members were involved with the Iwo Jima Memorial, so they have experience with this as well. Thank you for your concern.
Yeah. There is another committee that maintains all the monuments in that park. It's the Veterans War Council, and they have a separate corporation that all the money that they receive goes towards restoration and maintaining those. Like all the bricks you see when you go down there, those are all placed in by that committee. They sell bricks, they take the money in, and they use it. It costs about $3,000 every 3 years it's a process called waxing for the Iwo Jima monument. A company from New Jersey comes in and they restore that. And the monies that they receive goes towards that, and they are actually maintaining that, so to that's how that gets maintained.
Any other questions for here?
I just have one. So in the budget, it says 150,000 small museum building?
Well, that's the pavilion.
Oh, okay.
Right now, it's the pavilion. I know it's
I thought that-
semantics.
I
but-
wasn't
yeah,
sure
no,
if it was that or-
No, I know, it's semantics. It's called the pavilion.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking time for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make a motion that we
Can head out, I guess.
go back to the first applicant, which is the Maritime Museum.
So we have a motion and a second to go back to the first application, Maritime Museum. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Could I get the people involved with the Maritime Museum?
So we have a little bit of setup.
That's fine. So just while you're setting up, this is for an HVAC system feasibility study and design at the Maritime Museum.
Yes, indeed.
The Maritime Museum is asking for a CPA funding of $76,000 towards this project.
Remind me,
Yeah,
taking my time.
if you already.
Yeah. Keys is up in there. Yeah. Okay. Alright. So, I'm Elizabeth York. I am the Director of Collections at Battleship Cove and the Maritime Museum.
Steve Pond, Director of Facilities at Battleship Cove, Maritime Museum.
Hello. So you guys will probably notice that our application has changed a bit since the eligibility study. We made the decision as a staff based on last year's feedback. We don't want to put the cart before the horse. From your feedback last year, we understand that we need to do a feasibility study, get drawings in place, looking at the historic architecture of the building, making sure that the HVAC system fits into that and doesn't just bust right through it. So that's what we're asking for. We'd be working with local architectural firms. They would be providing us with recommendations, drawings, plans, and also helping us work with contractors to do the HVAC electrical engineering side. And that's everything in a nutshell for that, so. In a
You
very
don't
small
have any
nutshell.
estimates in here for the HVAC?
We don't, because actually, there might be one from GM from 2017. What we're planning on doing is, once we have the drawings and plans in place, to work with HVAC contractors to get a less rough estimate and more particular monies. So, as you guys know, the Maritime Museum, we have thousands and thousands of artifacts and archives in storage there. We've never had any temperature control on the second floor and on the first floor of the building. The first floor has heat in the winter, which does help out a bit, but in the summer, because it is an old brick building, built late 19th century, it turns into what feels like a pizza oven sometimes. It gets very hot, very dry, and then in the winter, the second floor is the exact same temperature as what it is outside. So very cold, uncomfortable to work in. So I've got some artifacts here for you guys just to give you a bit of an example of what has happened We have some film negatives here that from the heat have actually dried up and desiccated. So one-of-a-kind photographs, can't get them back. We have some film here that we can't even open the actual canister because it's rusted shut. We have a beautiful photograph of the Atlantic Fleet from World War I that has multiple issues. The mounting that it's on is coming off. The silver and the silver gelatin is actually floated to the surface, so it looks very reflective. The degradation is pretty strong in this one, but it's a great photograph of World War I battleships and cruisers. One of a kind. We also have another film in our collection that is I think one of the most rare. It actually shows the captain of the Titanic inspecting the ship the day before her maiden voyage. Something like that needs to be kept for posterity. So we're really looking for a way to preserve these artifacts. As museum professionals, we have to do our due diligence to make sure that they are in the best situation and environment as possible. The first floor is the exhibit floor. Second floor has a large open space as well as our collection storage. So the drawings and feasibility study would be for the whole building, and we understand that the installation and purchase for an HVAC system would be very expensive for the whole building, so we would break it up into phases. The first floor being the first phase for the purchase and install, collection storage being the second phase on the second floor, and the larger space on the second floor being the third and last phase for that.
I can tell you I'm very happy with this application because last year, this was exactly what we wanted, so that was great. A lot of my comments were going to be on the difference of the two architectural proposals. They were very different until you provided this.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm going to have to digest that.
Okay.
But I did have some questions. So on the application itself, the CPA request was $76,000, but the project cost was less. I'm wondering why the difference there.
The 10% contingency.
Okay. All right. Next one. And I guess my next question having to do with Battleship Cove. Now, Battleship Cove is now part of the Marine Museum, correct? It's under the same ownership?
Other way around, yeah. The Maritime Museum is now part of Battleship Cove. It's under the same Battleship Cove umbrella.
So I was wondering that they have a substantial funding drive going for, I guess, the main facility welcoming center.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering why they didn't donate any funds towards this effort.
I believe that the funding for that, I don't know, Christoph, would you like to weigh in on that?
Okay, great. I'm Christoph Shea, the Executive Vice President of Battleship Cove. The Maritime Museum came to us probably about 3 years ago. So we're incorporating it into our fundraising strategy. We're embarking on a capital campaign which will include the Maritime Museum. But in all of our present fundraising efforts, Maritime Museum is mentioned.
Okay. Let's see. In your application on the other, there was a line item 7,700. I didn't know what other.
That was the contingency.
That's the contingency. Okay, thank you. And that has to do with estimates. That has to do with estimates. I was wondering about what the status is of the elevator that we funded. I know work had been done on it. We never heard if it was complete or not.
Yes,
So-
the elevator project is complete. It's up and going. We had it state inspected for the last 2 years. So right now, that's all set. We are working on we're going to be working on the second floor, trying to put plans together to utilize that space.
Great, so the building is now handicap
Yes.
accessible?
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, like I indicated at the beginning, I'm very supportive of this application, and after we go through this round, I would welcome an application next year based on what the report
Okay.
says.
One
Great.
thing, also, I'm looking at the Civitech architect, which pretty much totals the 68,300. And then after that, I'm looking at the William Stark architect for 14,800.
No, that's the old one.
Oh,
Yes.
oh,
No, you have to throw everything out now.
okay,
Well, we weren't dealing with apples to apples
Okay.
before, so,
okay.
so that's where all of my comments
Yeah.
were, and,
Yeah, they were very different amounts, but because we changed our application sort of, I would say last minute, right after Christmas, we sort of had to,
one of the things for city projects that I've always been recommending is that this committee be the one to review the architects or to interview them and recommend a selection. We won't be able to do that with you.
okay.
But obviously you have 2 applications, so
Mhm.
that'll be on you,
Okay,
unless you ask for any advice.
okay.
Any other questions?
Well, let's mention that the project speaks for itself, that the museum, the building, and the artifacts, the books, I've been through myself on the second floor.
Mhm.
It's long overdue, so I'm glad the application is in this way.
Agreed, yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have white gloves if you guys want to
Yeah,
check
if you
out
guys
the
want to
items.
touch the things.
The next project.
No spaceless.
Clean up the dusty stuff.
Next project is People Incorporated. This applicant is Megan Sheffer, president of People Incorporated. This is to install a new natural slate roof at 636 Rock Street. They're asking for CPA funds of $110,000. Hi, how are you?
How you doing, Jim?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Hi.
And Jim?
I'm Bill Perkins, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at People Incorporated, and we own a home on Rock Street that was built in 1889. It was one of the first properties purchased by People Incorporated way back in the middle 70s, and has served various purposes and still continues to be a residence for 5 individuals that we're currently supporting. We're struggle to maintain the home because you know it's challenging with its maintenance and now needs a new roof replacement because of the age of the home. We need to replace it. It currently has a slate roof. We need to replace it with another slate roof, which is quite expensive, but. You know, and so we applied for the funds for that purpose.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question. I feel inadequate asking, despite, given the estimates you have. I'm kind of surprised that they're saying that they need to remove it. I mean, I think it's a great project. I'll be supportive of it. I want to see it restored or redone. I'm just a little bit surprised that they actually recommended removing it.
So, one of the most detailed estimate from Martelli Construction was, you know, reusing some of the slate pieces, but he's also indicating that there's likely to be deterioration under the slate roof, and so I think that's probably the primary reason why it needs to be removed.
I think the focus is the whole system of the roof, so that's non-porous as compared to now where it's letting the elements in.
Yeah.
So there'll be flashing, copper flashing at the eaves.
So
and-
usually with slate, you replace the copper flashing and saddles, hips and valleys as routine maintenance, because the slate itself isn't porous and doesn't go bad, so. It just seems early for it to be replaced, even if it's in tough shape. But you've got 3 estimates. I'm not going to challenge what they're saying as professionals. But despite those statements I'm making, I'm glad this application is before us.
I have a quick question on number 8, the timeline. It says to provide a schedule for project implementation. Looking at it, it says first 2 weeks in April 2019, third week in April 2019 installation, first and second week in May we won't have funding by that point.
That's one of the items that you're talking about, I have it on.
Okay, yeah, so,
Yeah, the timeline would have to be adjusted.
okay, so that's,
Yeah.
and that's fine, because we won't have the
Sure.
funding available at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
This was something that could have been planned a while ago, but now that this came forward, this opportunity, the timeline can be adjusted.
Okay.
Or you could do other work, it's just any work that you do prior to approval wouldn't be considered fundable.
Right. Right.
Like, and 100% of the funding is coming from CPA you're requesting, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
My questions were, I was surprised that there was no architect identified. I do appreciate the three different bids, but I would have liked to have seen an architect to be the one that made recommendations instead of going to three different companies and getting an estimate. So to me, that's very disappointing. In this Martley application, I would recommend that they put an ice and water shield on there, so that'll help protect it, and also that all of the work needs to meet the interior, the Secretary of Interior standards. Let's see. Again, Simon Roofing, no architect identified, and I know that's something that I had mentioned a few times as being important, especially for the slate roof. I believe those were the only comments. I know I've mentioned a number of times the handicapped ramp in the front of the building. That's just horrible looking. I'm hoping you guys come back another year to do something different there. I think it'll definitely clean up the look of the property. And just going through some of the photos.
That being said, is there an intention to have an architect on site at all?
It's something we can look into. I know the specifications for what that architect needs to be qualified to provide are specific, so.
But that's something that would qualify under this application, you know, we would be paying for in addition to whatever the work that one of those companies that proposed. So let's say they propose a number like $1 million, you know, a percentage would be for the architect's fee, so that would be normal. And it would give me, and I'm sure a couple of members, a much better feeling that, you know, this has been looked at by somebody. They're going to oversee it versus it's going to be one of us that are going to have to see the project. So that's why we always recommend that an architect be involved in the project. And it's not too late yet. So figured a percentage, let's say worst case 17% of whatever that is, maybe that's something that you all can pick up to give us a nice warmy fuzzy feeling when we're considering approving this application.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I'll say that, you know, I don't think it's going to be required to have an architect, but I will say that the first property in the local historic district doing this level of work, and that is impressive to me, so I'm really happy with that. And that being said, yeah, I'd love to see you have an architect on board too, because not only for the roof, but I'd love to see maybe more work done in the future.
So our deliberations happen within the next month or so. Would you be able to provide anything like that?
Sure, we'll definitely go back and retool.
This way it'll just give us kind of
Yeah.
another thing to, like, you know,
Yeah.
like use towards our decision making
Yeah,
process.
we'll send you confirmation.
Okay.
For me, it'll be extra points on your application, so.
We'd like that. Extra credit is good.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next applicant is the Lafayette Durfee House.
The number of them?
Number 3.
It's well, it's not number, it's C.
The application number. No, it's in, oh, I see it, yeah, number 12. Got it.
So this is application is for the renovation, continued renovation of the Lockean Durfee House. They're asking for $69,300 from the CPA funds.
Correct. And this is to go into the cellar to replace floor joists and repair or replace floor joists as needed, and maintain the structural integrity of the building with more permanent lolly columns.
Okay.
And we have Civitex is our architect, and they have brought on board a structural engineer named John Wayne, and he has done 2 inspections to the building, but we have no plans as of yet. He's coming down to do a 3rd inspection.
I have no questions because I was there not too far
Yeah.
back, like a couple of weeks ago, so I know the condition of it, so I'm definitely in full support of this application.
Under funding, number 7, the comment was reached out to the Florida Chamber of Commerce, requested for donation. We have not received a reply from that organization. Do they usually do funding, the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, we applied for them, just to, like, you can apply to banks too for funding.
Yeah.
So it was just a reach out.
Yeah, I
It
didn't
was
realize.
a
I just
solicitation,
wondered
let's put it that way.
Yeah, I didn't realize
Yeah.
that they.
Well, they don't.
Did that. Oh.
We found out the hard way.
Okay.
Even if you remember.
Any questions? I mean, the construction and that's been going on has been great. I mean, if anyone has not been to this museum, it's phenomenal. I mean, our last work with the fireplaces, it was
Yeah.
incredible. I mean, I love the demonstrations you've done. I mean, it's extensive. I mean,
Thank you.
It's great.
It seems like there's something almost every other week.
We're
Yeah.
trying,
around
yeah.
there, yeah.
Yep. We would
Yeah,
event
it's-
schedules for the spring and summer. too,
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Dave, can you talk about the last funding application that we funded, what that project was, and is it 100% complete?
That project is 100% complete. Excuse me. It was for $224,000, and that was to replace the hearth, the 4 fireplaces, the chimney, and to put a new wooden roof on it, on the entire building. Excuse me. And that was done by, masonry work was done by John Israel from Rhode Island, and Steve Tyson of Northeast Architectural Firm. He has done work for us in the past. So that job is 100% complete. If many of the board has been down there to see it. And you invite anybody to come down, please,
Really worth going.
to see what CPA does.
The demonstrations are great. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had hot chocolate there and apple pie there, and it's
Yeah,
like
it's-
all cooked in the hearth. It's incredible, like what they can actually do. Like
Yeah.
the people who do the demonstrations for you, like I mean,
They really enjoy
really
it. They're
informative.
It's
So nice.
informative, yes.
Yeah.
So we have the roof, we have the chimney, we definitely have the front of the building.
Right.
Um,
The next funding is for the exterior and windows.
That's what I was gonna ask.
That- yeah.
The last 3
Right,
facades
right.
and, what do you call it, the L?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's included from last year's funding, and we're going to start that in the spring.
Okay.
Mass Historic grants? How do they continue to apply for those? I know like timing is everything.
Yeah, time is everything.
Yeah.
In fact, they give a class on how to fill out the form. It's a seminar, basically, right? And the closest is down the Cape. I think it's in Sandwich or something. It's on the other side of the canal where they give the seminar. I just haven't been able to get down there to get one. But the Mass Historical, a lot of the grants are matching grants. So
Yeah, I get it.
it
Yeah.
kind of takes a bite out of your budget,
Right.
The matching, and they favor the municipalities over nonprofits.
But they have the funds probably to do the matching.
Yeah.
More so.
Yeah.
It's not an absolute, but usually
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Steve. Then next up, we have the Freedom Street Fire Police Station. This applicant is Charlie Jacobson. This is for the Freedom Street, 77 Freedom Street Police Fire Station. They're asking for CPA funds of $94,050.
That was wrong.
Hello? You just want to state your name and affiliation?
All right, my name is Sir Charles Jacobson. We acquired the property in '89. This is my first wife, Gloria, and my son, Jeffrey. Our son, Jeffrey.
Next generation fire.
Yes, he's grown up working on the fire barn for the many years that we've owned it, not as a full-time job, but just as far as helping Dad and working and so on. He got an education out of it. We put some pictures there. Them are before pictures of the fire barn when we acquired it in 90, 18, or
Almost 30 years ago.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll give you some sort of a guesstimate as far as what. I've had repointed 3/4 of it already. We did that pretty soon in the project. And I have completed 4 apartments. There are 3 more that can be done. I can't do much more because I'm getting old and find I want to do other things, playing with my old cars instead of working.
We still want to keep up the building, so
Yeah.
after 30 years, even after what we've done to it, it still needs.
Yeah,
Quite a
especially
bit
the
more,
windows.
quite a bit more on the exterior for the windows and the masonry work, yeah. So, but the windows are a huge part of the project as well.
Is there only one estimate for the window restoration?
We have-
Correct.
Only one?
Yeah.
Yep. I have,
Speak to, I'm Ann Keane from Civitex Architects. We've been helping the Jacobsons with their proposal. We actually reached out to the window contractor that they have listed in their application. He is someone that specializes in restoration of windows, is currently doing work at the New Bedford Whaling Museum, and has done a number of the historic properties for whale. So
Yeah.
it's somebody that it is a
Specialized.
specialized
Yeah.
trade. We
Yep.
wouldn't want just
Yeah,
any
just a
general
general
contractor
contractor.
doing that window restoration. So it is a little bit harder
Yeah.
to get
Like
several
Lafayette
quotes.
Durfee is that way too.
Yes, so
Mhm.
that's why
Yeah.
I wanted to call
Okay.
it this time.
Let's say we can use this twice in the fire museum, it'll probably be exactly the same, so.
It's just a repeat.
Want to share it with us, Mike?
The,
questions?
Yeah, the one comment that I just put on here was, you have an opportunity, because there are apartments in there, to apply for 20% mass, 10% federal historical tax credits. So that'll be 30% of those costs would come back from them. So there's an April 30th deadline coming up, so I highly recommend you submit an application so that this is on the radar, and then whatever we do here, that'll just be 30% on top of what that is, so potentially you can use that money for something else into the building.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah,
Somebody have to
I
guide
think-
us.
A lot more to go, yeah.
yeah, there's
Outside.
2 sources that you can tap the money from, right? And that's your choices. You're in charge there.
Yeah, so the state of Massachusetts, they actually run the state and the federal numbers. So per my estimates, the tax credits would be about a little over 32,000 based on what you're looking to do. So it's well worthwhile. And, having that you have an architect on board, they can help you with that process, because I think one of the things they look is photographs, a floor plan of some type, at least to get Mass Historical Commission to say, yes, you qualify. The second you get that letter, yes, you qualify, then it's just a matter of submitting the receipts at some point, looking to get those historical tax credits. So if you do miss the April 30th deadline, I think there's an August 30th deadline, but it'd be better if you do it now.
See.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Any other questions?
I'll just mention that, the Fire Museum has done a fantastic job, and I think it's an interesting opportunity, even though this is a private organization, not a non-profit organization, but to have a building have the same iconic history, but in the south end, I think this could be a good opportunity to save the property.
We think so too.
We want to make it better. Keep going on the same track it's been going on.
Any other questions?
Right, thank you.
That didn't hurt.
Didn't hurt yet, Charlie.
The pain comes later.
I'm going to kind of accuse myself.
Okay. So the next project, what did I do with my, there we go. I lost my agenda. The next project is the Dr. Fisk House. This is presented by Jim Soul, President of the Preservation Society. They're asking for funds of $49,000.
Hi, Jim Soul from the Preservation Society. I'm recusing myself. I was, now I'm out for this particular project, an application for the Preservation Society. I submitted 2 more estimates today that were a little bit different. This project includes heating and air conditioning units for the 4 apartments and windows. And in the original application, I had it as being 6 windows, and the contractor window guide we had come down, he pointed out that there were really 10 windows that were in really bad shape, which is funny because I was there this weekend. I've been repairing a lot of the original windows myself, but the newer windows, because the property is 1830s, but the newer windows from 1910 seem to be the ones in the worst shape that are rotting out horribly. So there's 10 that we put on the endangered list of windows, and I'm going to amend the application if you'd consider it. You've got the dollar price there. It's Steve Tyson who's done work, I think, for the Lafayette Durfee House. Our architect who did the conditions assessment was Secosha, and he would stay on board for overseeing the project. Mr. Tyson's worked with them in the past.
So the whole house has had the assessment done.
Whole house had a conditions assessment.
Paid for by?
The Preservation Society. That's paid for. The second part of the application was for the HVAC. And funny thing is, our first 2 applications came in almost exactly what our original guesstimate was on the application, which was $8,000 a unit. And then I had a third estimate, which included an engineer, and the price ballooned up. And I was upset about that, but when I looked at the things it was ballooned up about, I think this is a good thing, because it included the price of an engineer. The first 2 did not. It included the upgrades to the electrical and gas system, which the first 2 estimates did not. It included carpentry work. It included getting rid of an old oil tank and piping from the original gas. So this price is a good $20,000 more than our original estimate. And I'd amend that to go up to extra $20,000. If the board couldn't agree to that, I'd scale back the project, because it's still worthwhile for us to get at least a couple of these units completed.
So what is the exact funding being requested at this point?
It would be $69,000
Instead of the $49,000?
instead of $49,000.
So at the time, like, there was more guesstimates than it was an actual estimate.
Right.
Just because of the time frame of the company.
For when the real estimates came in. I mean, some of the estimates were from the architect himself. So, I mean, they weren't completely bogus guesstimates. They just didn't include some of the detail that the benefit of an engineer.
was able to add to it.
Any questions from the board?
I just want to say you're doing a great job down there with those fireplaces and all this stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Tony, any questions?
Um,
Wow.
I mean, it's, you have an architect on board, which I like. I mean, it's very detailed. I'm just going to revise the application to be
69,000.
69,000. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I'm going to stay for the next one, too.
Okay, so the next one is the Historic District Guidelines. This one was submitted by Larry Dykes from the Preservation Society. They're requesting funds for $50,000.
Well, Larry's passing out. This is Larry Dykes. He's on the board of the Preservation Society. He submitted the application. I'm gonna sit next to Larry because I'm the president of the Preservation Society. The Preservation Design Guidelines are required by the Mass Historic Commission for municipalities and towns with local historic districts. As I explained in the application, this is not a little pamphlet or a booklet that talks about historic preservation. It's a specific report that has to be individualized to talk about how certain eras and styles of architecture should be maintained and preserved for historic districts. Although it's required for the local historic district, as you know, there are over 2,000 properties already on a significant property listing for Fall River, and probably another 6,000 or 8,000 properties that could be eligible for that. And so although this district guidelines would be specifically for the local historic district, many properties across the city would benefit from this because it could be used for developers, it could be used in the planning office, it could be used by the building inspector's office, it could be used by your board, historic commission, and the local district commission. I apologize, we only have one estimate. It's seems to be such a specialized trade to get a design guidelines done. The one estimate is all that I have. I think it's a very fair estimate from a professional, reputable organization who completed some from
What I
others.
did is I put an example of one of the guidelines up on the screen for folks to look at. This section indicates additions and new construction. So it basically would show the public that if you do own a historical property, that doesn't prevent you from doing additions, renovations, and it actually shows you exactly what would be expected.
That's right.
In a very simplistic manner.
That's right.
But those guidelines, I believe there are 12 different ones, and in the letter that you all received was a discussion within the Historic District Commission, which I chaired. And the discussion was to see if the Preservation Society could come here and really get into a little bit more detail about how important this is. This document is even important for this group because this document references the Secretary of the Interior. All of this work meets the Secretary of the Interior standards. And many times in our applications, we reference the applicant to follow those, but they have no example of what to do. And I'm just going to read out the 12 different types that the City of Newton uses. They have one called Design Guidelines Introduction. I just put on the screen additions and new construction. We have guidelines for architectural style, guidelines for commercial buildings, guidelines for exterior maintenance, guidelines for exterior woodwork, guidelines for masonry and stucco, guidelines for roofing, guidelines for site elements, guidelines for sustainability, guidelines for windows and doors. So on the screen, an example of what a guideline for windows and doors would look like. So when we do have a lot of applications coming before us, people looking to replace the windows with something new, and this goes into great detail.
Currently, where do people get this information? If they, I mean, is this
So-
part of the historical commission at the moment, or no?
No, so this request is to hire a specific architect which did the city of Newton one and does many throughout the United States. The Historic District Commission was looking to create these guidelines, but we found that they're very specific to this firm. We like that look. So my understanding is that having the Preservation Society apply instead of the Historic District Commission allows for this architect with this particular style to have this work submitted. If the Historic District Commission went through the process, we would require to do an RFP. And
It also allows these guidelines to ensure that they're publicly
So
accessible and available.
once it's done,
They
if
will
it gets
be
done,
on the Historic District
and
Commission.
usable
Online.
to residents and the municipality.
The whole
Online.
city, the
Yep.
whole city. So, I'm just going through really quickly the types of things. They even have the glass on garage doors and what's expected. For the Historic District Commission, it's very important that those properties within that local 40C follow this guideline, but we've made reference to guidelines, historical guidelines, in talking to the ZBA. This committee here, and this is my last year on this committee, so, you know, hopefully my replacement is an architect that would be here to support you, but you really need this. And my hope and my recommendation is that we vote to make this emergency application, only because come September 1st, we would like to have this project completed, so that in the application you say, here are the guidelines, please refer through them and make sure that you have followed the guidelines, and the people can go in and download the sections that has relevance to their projects.
And Tony, I'm going to change the subject just slightly. I just want to remind the committee that this is really the final step of the creation of the local historic district. This local historic district is a project that the preservation started 10 years ago. In fact, I think Ann Keene was one of our first volunteers. She was on the board back then. There were so many volunteer man hours. I could hazard that the process to create a local historic district, which is normally done when cities hire architectural firms to complete the studies, is usually usually like $1 million or more. So essentially we're talking about a project that's worth probably $1 million, but this is the first time this project has asked for any money, except for when we did some mailing out with the city a couple of years ago. I think that was about $50 or $80 we had to advertise to. So this is it, and this is the final step. In fact, this step is mentioned in the Mass Historic Commission's preservation plan. It's specifically noted that this is of such importance, and that the cities and towns that don't have it were essentially slapped on the hand for not having it.
And the problem that we've had in our Historic District Commission is that we've had property owners come before us not knowing what to do. And if this document was available to them, they would already come with that information. You know, and it tells them, for this particular thing, you need to consult with an architect. I mean, it's very good for the cost. It's an unbelievable thing. And it's good for anybody that has an old house. You know, you go to the windows and door section, they talk about maintenance, what you should do. If your roof has the green slime on it, it's a result of this, and this is how you clean it.
And this is a Fall River specific book. This is actually the corporation that we got the estimate from is from Philadelphia, and they will be coming to Fall River to do this project in person.
So, again, I'm not going to be here next year, and I know a lot of you depend on me to, you know, give my expertise on Secretary of Interior standards. I I looked at my agenda, I would have brought the standards, which is this thick.
How long will the document take to create?
It should be done by September.
No, but how long, if they got, when they get it, like how long does that?
6 months.
6 months.
It's 6 months process. And when I had a conversation with them, I was like, oh, let's just use the same pictures. And they said, nope, we have to come there, we photograph all of the buildings. And I know I've had a discussion with them saying, you know, obviously Fall River is very different than Newton. So there would be a section for mill buildings. There would be even a section on, we have 2 historical cemeteries that a lot of communities don't, like Oak Grove Cemetery being a park cemetery. There would be things in there that the park board could reference this document. So, and I think the other one, Jim, that they had indicated was FEMA has changed its guidelines on the water.
The flood zones.
The flood zones. So now there's another section involving historical properties within flood zones and what their recommendations are.
And this organization is actually doing New Orleans right now. They specialize in flood zones. Although I was really proud to be able to tell the lady over the phone that at least our local historic district's not directly in a flood zone. So I was kind of happy about that.
So my discussion about the emergency aspect of it is that if we wait until May, June, this is not going to be ready if it gets approved until next year. It's another year lost. And right now, the Historic District Commission is desperate for this. This is very useful for this group in our applications this year. You know, and I know we've been talking about changing the application process. We could reference these documents and they will be on the website. We can put this on the CTC website. We can put these documents on the Historical Commission website. So I think it would be very, very valuable. But right now, the Historic District Commission and what it needs to do has no documentation that the applicants coming before us can use. And it's become stressful for the property owners, stressful for their neighbors, who the whole sole reason that they wanted to be in a local C district was to make sure that all of the properties around them remain historical. So there's a lot of things going on. What I've been showing here is showing that if you do own a historical building, that it doesn't prevent you from doing an addition. And what a lot of people think when they look at historical buildings is that there's all this red tape and they stay away from it. And this document, for the first time, will tell people, if you own a historical property, it doesn't prevent you from doing additions. All this document is showing you how to do it the correct way. So to me, it's very important.
And I think too, for the Historical Commission, it's important because when we have people that come before us and they want to do a demolition because they think that they won't be able to do like what you're talking about, an addition or whatever on their property, and we can show them, no, you can, these are things that you can do. So even for us, and I mean, we, just getting questions from people just in the community, what can I do? I have an old house. How do I do this? How do I do that? It's going to be right on the city website. So anybody will be able to access this in the city. So, I mean, it's for the community, the greater community. It's not just for the commissions.
And I didn't print out copies for everyone because it's a book. I think I printed out one to be shared. I don't know how far it got, but.
One thing I'd just like to bring out, just so that the public and everyone here is even aware of about our affiliations and our different parts of our other boards and organizations that some of us are a part of. One, Jim Soul is the president of the Preservation Society of Fall River. I'm the vice president of the Fall River Preservation Society. Kristen is the chairman of the Historic Commission, and she's on the Historic District Committee, vice chair. Tony is the chair of the Historic District Committee. So we are all appointed partially because we're on these boards and partially because we're passionate about getting CPA passed, and that's why we're on here also. So just so that everybody's aware that our affiliations and things like that, I'd like everybody to know that.
So if there's no other questions for anybody, I would like to make a motion that we submit this as an emergency application.
I just would like to say I want to abstain from this vote
What?
because I'm part of the Preservation Society and I choose to.
Right, so my only comment with that is Stuart had indicated, and we also take the non-disclosure or whatever one of those. There's no benefit that any individual here is going to gain from this. So even though you're in Preservation Society, I don't think you're prevented from voting.
No,
on it.
I'm just saying, but I'm going to.
Okay, that's fine. So I made a motion that we consider this an emergency application.
So we have a motion and a second to make this application an emergency application.
We got a first and a second.
So, all in favor? All, any opposed? I abstain. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4,
5 vote.
5 vote.
2, 4, 6, the 6 of us, so 5-0 because you abstained.
No, I said no.
Oh, you said no?
You're against.
Okay.
You're against the emergency.
Just
plan.
as an emergency, yes.
So it's
4-1.
4-1.
Well, I think it's emergency because we'll have it ready for next funding series, right?
Right.
So it will be beneficial to us as a learning tool, so otherwise I wouldn't say it was emergency. But
Okay.
So now that it passed the emergency vote, I make a recommendation that we fund this application for $50,000.
Point of order, does it actually pass them if it's 4, but you have to have, don't you have to have a majority of the whole board? I don't want to shoot myself in the foot,
We
but,
don't need the majority, so what we voted was first to indicate that this is an emergency application.
That's
So
what we just
that
voted
passed.
on.
So the second vote that I'm making a motion right now is that we fund the project for the amount of the application, which is $50,000.
We need the majority of who's here.
I thought it was the majority of the whole.
The whole board. I
Whole
don't,
board.
Is that correct?
I've checked that a number of times. And
I
you're
believe
allowed
it's
to
the
vote.
board of the board that's here.
Yeah.
we need to have a vote on the agenda.
It is on the agenda, it says hand vote.
Does it say vote?
No, it doesn't.
I thought
No.
No, that's signed.
This,
Put it on, make a motion, put it on
this says
next week.
preservation consultant, is that what this is?
No,
No.
we're on the funding hearings.
Funding
We're in
hearing?
funding hearings, we're here.
Okay, so at the next application,
So we can add it into the next meeting.
the next meeting, we're voting to fund
Yes.
it. Okay.
So if you could vote to
You say a word.
the emergency.
Thanks, Jim.
Voted to make an emergency application. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, we did that one, no.
So-
Fall River Fire Museum is next.
The last one is the Fall River Fire Museum. So this is for the Anawan number 6 restoration project. They're asking CPA funds of $187,968,000 to continue this restoration process.
Hi, good evening, board members. Michael LePage, President, Fall River Fire Museum. I think you probably all know me, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going on the project, the history and, you know, the use for the project and stuff like that. I would like to recognize my board members who are sitting up in the corner there and thank them for their very hard volunteer work in restoring Anawan number 6. So my application is kind of twofold. I put the application in, but then I was made aware that this committee voted to change the status of the project from private to public. I mean, I said it right.
Yep.
And because of that, it sort of created a hardship on two fronts. The monies from last year still have not been allocated because the contract can't be signed because of the change. So technically, Chris Gallagher would have to sign that window contract. But the biggest issue with that is we'll never get the project done for that amount because the windows alone were over $50,000. And it would require us to go out for an RFP through the city. if it was to be changed to the,
So who actually owns the building?
the city owns the building.
So, just so everyone is aware, we actually didn't vote on that. Sandy and I had met with the administration, Kathy Ann Viveras. We didn't even really think about it, but she was the one who's like, the city owns this building. So we had no choice when we wrote the grant agreement that it had to be that way. It wasn't our decision. She, as we went through the project with her, she's the one who said it's city-owned property and that's how it should be. So it wasn't our decision to do. We were just told, being that it's a city project, city building, it had to be that way, so.
My only comment with that is they have a lease agreement. In the lease agreement, I think it's quite clear that the city owns the building, but it's requiring that their group do all of the restoration.
Well, who are we as a board to say it's not city-owned?
Oh, we agree that it's city-owned, but they have a lease agreement with the city for 66 years?
Yeah.
60 years total.
60 years.
Yeah.
And that lease agreement, basically, the city is saying, the Fire Museum, you do all of the restoration and repairs to the building.
So what does that have to do with us?
Okay, but, yeah, I wish that you are right, but the administration guided us.
Like, we could debate this all day long between all of us, but it isn't, you just said it's a city-owned building, so that's why it was written that way. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm just hearing, but it's just funny, did the city read the lease agreement that they signed 4 or 5 years ago?
We don't have the lease agreement in front of us, so we're not gonna go there.
So there's a couple of things that I'm asking the committee. Number one, if it stays a public project for last year's, which I think is a little bit unfair, puts us at an unfair advantage because, again, we're not going to be able to get that project done because we were sort of changed after the fact, after the money was awarded, which I don't think, maybe I can't speak for the decision-making powers, but it does create hardship. So right now, the contract's in limbo. It still hasn't been signed, correct? Yeah, it still hasn't been signed. So perhaps we could revisit that number and make an adjustment to for the RFP, for the new RFP, for the, if there's anything, I think that was the only item in there that was over the 50,000. So that would have to go out for RFQ.
In the meantime, what I would say is I think we should ask corporate counsel to clarify it. We heard from Ms. Viveras, she told us her opinion, she guided us that way. But I'd say, given how much this changes things, we should ask corporate counsel for guidance.
Sounds like a good idea.
Maybe because of the long-term lease, it does make a difference.
Sounds like a good idea.
I'm not a lawyer, so I
Yeah.
can't speak to
Because
that.
to me, it's almost like the wall, they're gonna build the Vietnam Memorial Wall. And they're
On
giving
city
it
property.
to the city, but they're
Yeah.
doing the project.
So that's a good idea.
Like, they're doing the project, but they're gonna gift it back to the city. Basically,
I
right?
do appreciate that because anything you can do to, because it was, the way it was before worked great. I mean, we were operating on our own. We didn't have to have the city involved in it or anything like that. I mean, as a nonprofit, as the president of a nonprofit, how can I go out for RFQ? I can't. So I can't even provide you proper quotes.
Correct.
So this application,
That's a good idea that Jim had for
I
us.
appreciate it.
Vote for, to call.
No, we don't need to vote, no.
We'll just draft a letter, and
Sandy,
then
will
we'll get a
you
copy
draft
of
a-
the lease.
Can we add this to our next agenda to revisit this?
Yes.
So
Okay.
that
How's
we
that?
have
Good.
some discussion.
Yeah, maybe we'll have some information and we'll bring this back then.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so with this application, I'm just bringing it up because I know Tony has asked, how are you making out with your projects? And that one's kind of, it's not going anywhere. So with this application before you, again, when I learned about it, because we weren't like officially notified, when Ann from Texe learned about it, she contacted me and said, hey, that's going to require to go out for RFP or RFQ. So, and we literally, when I found out, it was literally not even a week. It was like days.
Right.
And before the deadline. So I'm like, I just had to put a number in there. So the number that I used was Civitex estimates was the number I plugged in, which actually doesn't even include their fee, which is a separate number in the application you'll see.
187,
Yeah, right. But it kind of presents a whole bunch of issues. When I was trying to get quotes, I thought it was still private, so I wasn't having any problems getting quotes. I was getting the quotes, and they were coming in. And then when we learned of the change, and I contacted the people that I was pending quotes on, not spending any more time on it.
Once they give you quotes, that bars them from being one of the
Right. So, exactly. So that's, again, stopped all that, so I couldn't even provide you. I mean, I gave you what I had, but it was based on private, not public. So, and I wasn't able to get any quotes for the masonry work above the roof, which needs to be addressed. The hose tower and the chimney needs to be fixed or repointed. Obviously, you want to do that work before you do the roof, because you don't want to mess up the roof. The roof itself is currently an asphalt roof. And here we go talking about roofs again on city buildings. I can arguably say that's an emergency too, because it's leaking like a sieve. And it's the same age as a lot of these roofs in the city right now that are causing problems. 30 years. It was put on in the late 80s. It's been patched multiple times. The city's patched it. We've had an in-kind donation. The firefighter went up and patched it. We just recently had to have it patched again. Okay, that down one was $600 repair. So it's patch on top of patch on top of patch. So it definitely needs to be completely ripped off and redone. And when the roof was put on in the late 80s, early 90s, they were actually removing the slate. They pulled the slate roof off at that time. And so there is no slates left on the building. They're gone for the past 30 years.
On the dormers.
A little bit on the dormers. I wouldn't really say that's a roof. I'd say it's a sidewalk. Exactly. Well, we actually have pieces of slate from the gutters that were cleaned out that were left in there by the contract, and we removed them. So we have exact copies. So with the help of Civitex, we've been looking at this and saying, what's required on this. And my understanding of the Secretary of Interior standards is that with a replacement asphalt shingle roof, replacing an existing asphalt shingle roof, with the materials that are available right now, Ann can speak to. I mean, they look pretty darn good. There's actually some companies that produce asphalt shingle roofs that look like slate, as close as it can look like slate. Would we like to put a slate roof on there? Absolutely, all day long. Do we have the money to do it? No. And I don't even think that you would have the money in your coffers to fund such a project. We did have our previous architect and design engineers go up, and they have issues with the beams in the attic can't support that weight unless they were repaired and shored up and sistered and all of that. So there's that issue. So there's a lot of issues. We just want to replace the existing roof with, of course, we have the architect, so they're looking at a proper way to do that. Replace existing roof with a better roof surface, and something that's going to be more affordable, that's going to look better, and maybe down the road, maybe the next replacement, we could visit that issue. I did want to bring it up because I know Tony had some concerns with that.
I do too. I'll stop. Ian, what is your understanding of Secretary of Interior standards? I know it's a little bit gray. Honestly, I'd much rather approve a higher budget for a slate roof. Your input.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking and trying to balance. We know what their budget is. We don't know what the budget that they would receive from the CBC. We also know that the budget's going to go up because of if we do have to go out to public bidding. I mean, we're looking at it as a restoration project. Right now, the slate has not been on there for 30-some years. There's The slate isn't there anymore as a historical feature. It's already been removed. So if the slate was still there, we would say yes, they really should go back, restore, and like you were saying earlier to People Incorporated, look and see if we can spot, replace slate. But unfortunately, that isn't there. We're not trying to recreate. It's not a recreation of the. We're not trying to restore it back to any particular time period. I don't think that's the intent of the Fire Museum. So we're not as concerned about bringing back the slate because we're trying to restore it to a certain time period. I don't think that's ever been the intent, to be a certain time period.
Right.
Correct. So.
And we would be looking at replacing any flashing with copper, so it would look like
Right.
that right now. The downspouts and the gutters and the flashing, all that's copper, that would remain. If it needed to be replaced, it'd be replaced with copper.
And so, is there a reasonable facsimile where you can't put regular asphalt?
No, I mean, we look into the options for them as to what we can come up with that would get us somewhat of a look, but I don't know that the invitation slates are going to be the answer to that.
I didn't know if there were any examples outside that you've worked with, because I haven't seen them, but that impressive.
Yeah, I mean, they're not, it's still going to be a asphalt shingle roof. It would not be slate.
I don't
so.
think Secretary of Interior would cover that. I know it's not a matter of these old slates there anymore. If it was, because it's visible from the street, so.
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
I'd like to
it's
see an application that has at least the two options.
right.
The, with respect to the artificial slate roof, a lot of the contractors that I contacted, they won't even put it on. And some have pulled a lot of them off because they fail in New England because the freeze-thaw cycle, it causes them to curl. So if you look at, I can't think of the name of the church right now, but it's on South Main Street, the old St. Patrick's Church, the convent, that building that they put, that new building off to the side, off to the south, that has the imitation slate. And I drove by and looked at it. It's all curled. So, and I don't really want to do that.
I mean, we'd certainly willing to look with their.
Sure, I mean,
at looking at what it would be what a slate roof would cost, and as Mike mentioned, because of the weight of the slate, we would have to bring in a structural engineer to further evaluate what needs to be done with the framing, because you're adding considerable amount of weight, and that's by code you'd have to have that evaluated.
Right, and if, Tony, if you can go back to the very top of the application. Yeah. There's a photo of before and after. I just want to point out one other thing that's going to be apparent to the slate. Now see, that top photo? So if we were to put a slate roof on that building, that would be the time to put the cupola back, right there. The chimneys, which I believe there's 4 of them. 2 on that side, 1 there.
And I think if you do a roof, you should definitely have the chimneys extend up.
Oh, yeah, and then in the back, the horse stall had a cupola on it. So you would have to put all of those elements back on the roof before you even considered putting new slate on it. So that's going to add a substantial amount of cost to the project as well. The host tower, you wouldn't need to extend that up at this point because it wouldn't impact the roof. But
because it already extends past the roof.
Right. So you're probably looking at, I don't know, Ann, what are you thinking, maybe $3 million to do that much work?
I mean, there is a substantial amount of work on that. I mean, we'd have to look at it in a couple of different factors as to reconstruction and.
The property just got in a quote for $100,000.
That'd be nice.
I'm sure there's gonna be a lot more. Just
Trust me, I'd love to see it. I really would.
Yeah,
Right now, it's almost
unfortunately-
more of an emergency situation for us to get this roof addressed because it's leaking like a sieve. And we're getting water damage inside.
Well, yeah, the cost as of now is that we are looking at possibly going to public bid. It'll be substantially more than what the other was looking at as a nonprofit that wasn't needing to go out to public bids. So that would be really of interest to everyone to go and and see
I'd have no
about
problem
that.
supporting this as emergency funding, because I personally believe when it comes to roofs, that is an emergency.
Yeah.
But I'm not keen on approving a whole new asphalt roof for a property that's supposed to be under Secretary of Interior standards. I'd much rather see us pay, unfortunately, for a good temporary repair, and then get another estimate for the right roof.
Now, when you say repair, do you say replacement or repair?
Repair.
But I say restoration.
Because the whole roof needs to be addressed.
Yeah. You gotta fix the whole roof.
I know, I'm down there every day. It's leaking on the police side of it, this structure here, wall, every valve is leaking now. It's leaking on the apparatus side, both sides are leaking on constant.
This is
basis.
Jay Chatter.
Yeah, that's my vice
Jay
president.
Chatter, I'm the vice president of the museum, in charge of construction of the museum. The hayloft is leaking significantly. There's a couple of pictures in there, I believe, of the ceiling tiles that are all starting, they're even worse than that now. They're falling down. We'll probably have to remove that section. The water's an issue. It's, but, you know, with the structural issues that are going on, we just had the first floor completed with structural steel added and wall outlet columns, and you're going to put additional load on the second floor. We don't know the condition of the floor joist in that part of the building. That load is transferred through steel rods to A-framing for the roof above it. So now you're putting structural loads, and I'm not an architect. I think you're going to put on a lot of structural loads on the entire structure to put that much weight back because that building is flexed by that load coming off. You take off 25 pounds, your body structure changes. You want to put all of that back in. You're 30 years older. Your body won't take that structure the same way. So you're going to have to totally evaluate that. And I would be willing to guess it probably costs $250,000 to have a complete engineering study, structural engineering study done of that building alone. You know, with all the funding that's going on and these changes that have happened to us, you know, you're adding in where we have to bring in standardized wages. That adds 30% to every project right off the bat when you've got to go into union construction and everything else. And that's a requirement of the city, right, Sandy, as far as funding for any construction?
Okay, well,
You're adding 30% for labor into a project, never mind everything else that's going on. So this is an emergency. It really is.
I agree. I support emergency repairs, but we're beholden to Secretary of Interior standards from the state and the federal.
Again, that's interpretation of reading that. I've read through the Interior Secretary's reports, and if it's existing, which is existing right now, which has been here for 30 years,
well, you know,
you can get away with going back to it.
I appreciate your comments. We're definitely going to take what you say into consideration. We will revisit this interior standards with the functionality of this building. We plan on speaking with the attorney to see whether this can continue the process the way it has in the past, or does it have to go through the city process with the RFP, which I understand is a project and an expensive project. So with that being said, I mean, we can discuss and all of these other issues at our deliberation time. So I'd like to bring it all back in, see if anybody else has any questions on it. We are going to write a letter to the attorney. We will contact you and bring you back to this forum to discuss our findings on that and this project again at our next meeting.
And I would like to make one recommendation that Mike, you give Jim a copy of the lease agreement so that when they do go to talk to Corporation Council, they have that leasing agreement that showed what the city's commitment was and what your commitment was.
No, not the full, just the front and back page. Yeah.
I appreciate your comments very much so, and like I say, we'll definitely take what you're saying into consideration with our deliberations.
Yeah, Jade, I apologize for having a disagreement, but the one thing I definitely agree with you, it should be an emergency. We need to take care of the roof.
Yeah, I mean, it threw a complete curveball with everything that we've designed,
Yeah.
you know, going forward. That, you know, we just added 50% cost of labor, and now we've got everything, all the bidding process and everything else. And it just, it's throwing a big curveball at us for what we're doing.
And-
The amount of work that we've done.
And I think that,
As volunteers,
I
it
think,
hurts us.
I think that you can hear the passion in Jay's voice. Jay's down there every day, Fred's down there every day. These guys are killing themselves, doing work on the building on their own time, like I mentioned before. Their own time, their own money, they've donated supplies. Jay's previous museum, he's donated all kinds of supplies, lumber and things like that. So they are extremely passionate, and I do appreciate
Are
it.
there any other questions for Mike?
Now, you replaced, we fixed it, what, 3 times already?
Yes, at least, yes, yeah. And they're just so dry rotted that they're just, you know.
Does this affect any, like, the funding you had before, what you're doing? Is it gonna hurt?
It is because, like I say, it's going to affect the opening only because your question to me last time was when's it going to open? Well, we still haven't even received the money from last year to do the window repairs, so it's set us way back. And then this is a new elephant that just came crashing in the room, unfortunately. Last winter is when it really kind of reared its ugly head. So I do appreciate the committee's consideration. And your understanding.
Yeah, and we definitely tried to resolve the ownership
Yeah.
problem first.
Yeah, that's gonna make a difference in what they're asking for.
Yeah.
Wait, one last question on the repointing, is that completed?
Repointing is complete as of, other than a heavy-duty cleaning on the front facade that they recommended that we do, the previous architect in a few years, they let it weather a little bit, do a heavy cleaning to blend that mortar in better and get some of that blacking off the front. You're not gonna get the effervescence off, but just to make it look a little better.
And you're gonna oversee that effort, or?
Well, right now, we've given them proposals, but
Okay.
yeah, we're not under contract for any work at this point in time.
The work in the basement that was funded the previous year has been completed. That's done. A lot of the structural work in the basement's been done. It looks great. You should go down there. If you like columns, you'll like my basement. There's plenty of them. So it looks good. So with that said, should I or should we consider proposing 2 different alternatives that you had suggested? The full boat and just the emergency repair?
I think so.
Would you like 3 separate bids, or do you want just a cost estimate?
I think a cost estimate, yeah.
Because
That sounds good.
hopefully we can escape the RFP process, but if we can't, you're just gonna be making it worse for yourself if you're trying to get estimates.
I'm just kind of stuck. I think you
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll add you back onto our next agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Jay.